Can we mathematically evaluate and balance the cards in Flesh and Blood? Let's find out. Hi friends, welcome back to Nearly Sane Games. I'm Neil, and today we're going to be looking at evaluating Flesh and Blood's cards' power levels mathematically. We're going to do this by comparing cards to each other and attempting to assign numeric values to each attribute and ability. The primary goal of this project is to try to find values for every attribute and ability that balance the total value of the cards. Some cards will not be able to be balanced. An unbalanced card does not necessarily mean it's better or worse. Many of the game's most powerful cards are still balanced. It suggests that an individual parts just don't add up the same as they do on other cards. This could also be due to my methods not being able to properly calculate an accurate score. In the end, take all of this information with a grain of salt. For this analysis, I have not developed scores for heroes, weapons, and equipment. I would like to eventually do this, but they have a lot of unique abilities and require some different rules. With that said, let's get into it.
I'm going to start by looking at each card and calculating what I will call the card's base value. This will be the value of the card ignoring all of the abilities. To form our baseline, I'm going to look at what I call vanilla cards, or cards with no abilities. We will start with Wounding Blow, Brutal Assault, and Raging Onslaught. Each of these are common, red pitch, generic attack actions with 3 block and no abilities. We will start by assuming these cards are all equally balanced. As we look at these cards, I will be looking at costs and benefits. Benefits will add to the value of the card, and we will add points to the total. Costs will be represented by negative values. I will start with assigning 10 points for each benefit and negative 10 points for each cost. I use 10 points in case we decide later that some benefits or costs need to be worth less than a full 10 points. We will start with the pitch. We know we have cards like Gorganian Tome that have no pitch, so we will say that the red pitch is worth 10 points. We will continue and say that yellow pitch is worth 20 points, and that blue pitch is worth 30 points. Next, let's look at the defense value. Here we must consider a card like Ball Lightning, which has 0 defense. Since this card has a defense value, it can be pumped up by a card like Reinforce the Line. That is different from a card like Smash with Big Tree, which has no ability to block. Because of this, I will consider a value of 0 defense to be worth 10 points. Each additional point of defense will add 10 points of benefit to the card. So defense points will be 10 times the defense value plus 1. For the attack, we will say that each point of attack is worth 10 points. We need to consider Rouse the Ancients, which has a 0 attack. We do not have an attack action that does not have an attack value, so I'm going to say that 0 attack does not have any special benefit and will be worth 0 points. The attack points will be worth 10 times the attack value. This leaves our cost. For each pitch required, we will subtract 10 points. If we add all of these values together, we get a total of 90 points. This looks pretty good, but we are still missing something. Consider Raging Onslaught and Smash Instinct. They both have the same pitch value, cost, attack value, and defense value. But Smash Instinct also has an ability. What is going on? Are these cards not balanced? It turns out these cards are still balanced. Raging Onslaught is generic, which is an additional benefit for the card worth 10 points. I like to call this the generic tax. If we include this generic tax with the rest of our base values, we see that our cards total up to 100 points. For clarity, we will subtract 100 points from our base value. This means that a card with no abilities that is balanced will have a base value of 0. Underpowered cards will have a negative total, and overpowered cards will have a positive total. There are additional benefits and costs to different types of cards. Defense reactions are worth an additional 30 points. Instants are worth 50. Illusionist auras are a benefit worth 20 points, while an arrow attack has a cost of 10 points. While the base values of cards is important, it is only half the picture. We need to talk about abilities. It can be complicated to figure out the values for abilities. The first thing I would like to look for is a card with an isolated ability. Consider Savage Swing. First, let's look at its base value. The base value for Savage Swing is 10. The only ability on this card is, as an additional cost, discard a random card. We will assume that this ability is a cost, bringing negative 10 points to the card and giving the card a balance total of 0. We can also look at the difference between cards to find an ability's value. Consider Swing Fist Think Later. This card is very similar to Savage Swing, except that it has Go Again, and its power is 3 less. From this, we can determine that the value of Go Again is 30 points. While these methods yield pretty good results, we must be open to the possibility that our test cards might be unbalanced. If many cards are unbalanced with the same ability, I may adjust the ability's value to maintain the most balance. When possible, I want to consider each part of an ability separately. Consider the Breakneck Battery ability. If the card discarded has 6 or more power, Go Again. We know the benefit value of Go Again is 30. We will consider the first part of the ability, if the discarded card has 6 or more power, as a cost with a value of negative 10. This will allow us to use that part of the ability on another card. For example, Savage Feast, which says, if the discarded card has 6 or more power, draw a card. Where possible, I will try to generalize the costs of cards. For example, take the ability on Regurgitating Slog. As an additional cost, you may banish Slogism from your graveyard. I will generalize this cost to, you may banish a named card from your graveyard. In theory, the cost is that you need to banish a specific card, and it won't change the cost. It is the same cost that is used on Nimble Strike, even though it is looking for different cards. Speaking of Nimble Strike, if you do pay the cost of banishing Nimbleism, you will get 2 benefits, +1 power and Go Again. When balancing abilities like this, I will consider this as 2 separate abilities, each with their own cost. So this would be banish named card, this gets +1 power, and banish named card, this gets Go Again. The cost has to be paid for each ability, so we will include it twice. These separations of costs and benefits of abilities generally work very well. I found that balancing cards in later sets where I had these pieces was easy. Assemble the ability and everything is just balanced. On the other hand, there are times it gets a little messy. For example, Warmonger's Recital has the next attack card gets. Since this does not give us the benefit immediately, it is a cost with a value of negative 10 points. As we continue, we see the second benefit also includes if this hits. Since this does not provide us with immediate benefit, this is also a cost with a value of negative 10 points. This leaves us with the total points value of this card at negative 10. Does this mean the card is underpowered? Possibly, but I think it could be argued that it is not. On the other hand, if a card was printed that had everything else the same, but said, when the combat chain closes, put it on the bottom of your deck, it would be considered a more powerful card because it would not have the added cost of being required to hit to get the benefit. There are some cards that have multiple abilities that you can choose from. I tried to just capture the most expensive ability. There's value in having the choice, but I didn't always capture that value. Finally, there are some abilities that I did not even try to break down. These cards have unique abilities or combination of abilities that my method cannot easily break down. For these, I just recorded the ability as the name of the card and assigned it a balancing value and moved on. The results are all in this spreadsheet that I will leave a link to in the description below. If you save a copy of it, you can make any changes you like and see how it will affect the results. The first page has a list of the numbers that control our totals. You can see the long list of abilities and the values I assign to each. I've tried to group values together, but it could still probably use some more organization. The next tab is a blank template. I'll duplicate this to add new sets as they become available. Let's go into the WTR tab. As you can see, I've entered everything according to set number. If you click on this green arrow by the card name, you can run the script that will recalculate the totals for this page. Our first column here shows the base value. The second column shows the total of the points for our abilities, and the third shows our total. Here, a 0 score will show a completely balanced card, where a positive score shows a slightly overpowered card, and a negative value will show a slightly underpowered card. For the most part, WTR cards are pretty well balanced. There are a few cards a little higher or lower, but not too many. You'll notice Glint the Quicksilver and Ironsong Determination as standouts. They don't seem too overpowered for what they do, but they don't balance. As we move on to Arcane Rising, we start seeing a bit more variation. The Opt ability balances sometimes, and other times it does not. Mechanologist items are complicated and can be tricky to try to balance. Runechant abilities look balanced on one card, overbalanced on another, and underbalanced on yet another. Still, we have a lot of cards that are balanced. Crucible of War is where things start to go off the rails. There are a lot of cards here undercosted or overcosted based off of the abilities that have been previously established. I might be able to adjust a few values with these to get them in line. I think some of them are just not balanced compared to other cards. As we move on to Monarch, we continue to have problems with balance. We have lots of new abilities that do not balance. If Put This Into Your Soul has a value of 20, one set of cards is balanced and the other is not. If the value is 10, the reverse is true. The problem is not simple. This might be a place to use half values. Maybe Put This in Your Soul should be valued at 15 points. There is also the question of the cards that don't have a class. The Light and Shadow only cards. Should these include the generic tax? Light cards suggest maybe, while the Shadow cards suggest no. Tales of Aria also suggests that talent-only cards might be more balanced with an extra 10 points. As we continue, though, we see that we have some underpowered Brute cards and some overpowered Runeblade cards. Smash with Big Tree is an underpowered card compared to the others. This all seems to check out. This leads us to Tales of Aria. Guardian and Ranger cards have some great balance. Runeblade tends to have more cards that are overpowered. Go figure. The Elements cards seem to suggest that we have the generic tax. The non-elemental cards seem to be mixed for Guardian, balanced for Ranger, and overpowered for Runeblade. Surprise again.
So I think that's everything. What do you think? Are there better ways to try to evaluate each card's abilities? Let me know in the comments below. Do you think you could come up with better numbers that would balance things better? Make a copy of my spreadsheet and try for yourself. I intend on continuing working on this spreadsheet as new sets come out and looking for balance and imbalances with new cards. If you've enjoyed this content, give this video a like and consider subscribing. Until next time, I'm Neil, and this is Nearly Sane Games.